Hello everyone. Um, this is a PYE P53 radio that used to belong to my parents, and I used it myself when I was a kid. Um, and so I decided, after it sitting for many years out in the shed, I'd see about restoring it. Turned out to be a little bit more complicated than that. Let's have a quick look at what the cabinet was like when I picked it up. From this angle, it doesn't look too bad. Been sitting in the shed for, as I say, for I don't know how many years, 25, something like that. But when I picked it up, I realized how bad the woodworm was, and the whole cabinet basically fell apart. So from this side, you get a slightly better view. When I picked it up, the right-hand vertical side panel just literally disintegrated in dust and fell apart. You can see the top as well is very badly damaged by woodworm. In fact, it goes much further than you can see here because it goes underneath the veneer for much of the way along the top. And just to make matters worse, the glass dial itself doesn't look that very good. A lot of the black paint has dried and flaked away, as you can see here. So all in all, these basically led me to the decision that whatever about the electronics inside, the cabinet itself was a total loss. And so the restoration, in fact, from a cabinet perspective, now turned into be a reproduction. It's at this stage that I should probably mention that I had a whole load of photographs of the original cabinet. And the start of the reconstruction of the new one. Unfortunately, my hard disk and my computer crashed, and so I, at least for the time being, have lost a whole lot of photos. Hopefully at some point, if I can get the disk repaired, I may be able to get it back, but for now, we move to a point where the cabinet is already well under construction, and pick it up from well into the project. So here's the basic plywood construction. I've just at this point put the two end plates together against the rest of the frame. It's all plywood, or pretty much all plywood construction here. A lot of drawing and dimensioning from the original cabinet, so I could have a set of plans to work to, and quite a lot of figuring out how they actually bent and curved the plywood to get the profile of the case. But at this stage, it's not looking too bad. I made one mistake, which is the of the 4 holes for the controls, the one on the extreme left. I drilled it too large. It was the first one I drilled, and I hadn't paid attention when I was measuring up, and I marked that hole as 1 inch diameter instead of 3/4. But yeah, not too big a disaster. So having roughly cut out the access panel on the front, I then built a router template for the exact dimensions of the aperture at the front, so that I could route a nice clean edges, because the whole thing has to get a bevel on it, and the template comes in handy for that as well. So first I just glued it or stuck it to the front here so I could route out the front opening. Then I put the same template on the inside of the front. And used it as the runner for the beveled router bit that I then used to follow the same profile, but to route a nice bevel on the outer surface. And so after it's routed, the outer bevel looks like this, and the inner router template is still glued or stuck inside, and that obviously gets removed. So next I fitted those little thin strips of wood that act as the frame for the speaker grill and for the glass dial, and I just tacked them in with pins while the glue dried, and then took the pins out. So then I just refitted the little latches for the back panel, just to check that everything lined up and that I could. This is the original back panel. It's the only thing that got saved. The only thing those little bugs hadn't decided they wanted to eat. Okay, this is just a little mock-up then. I decided to put the speaker grill in, and I cleaned and repainted the little metal divider that runs up the middle, and on the right side here it's just a paper template. It's just a paper mock. It's not the real thing yet. As you can see here, the speaker grill looks really dirty. I tried all sorts of things to clean it without any success. Just simple soap and water and various solvents and things. No matter what I did, it seemed to make it worse. So I decided this was going to be a job for a can of spray paint. Okay, having finished with the first mock-up, the next stage was to start the veneering. For the bevel around the front opening, the consensus was this was Zebrano or zebra wood. So I got some of that and started to veneer around the bevel of the front panel. I took my time. It was fairly laborious because on a bevel there was no way I could clamp it very effectively. So I basically cut the veneer into strips, maybe 3 or 4 inches long, and literally held it there by hand until the glue dried. So painstaking stuff, but worth it in the end. And this is basically what it looked like when I had the all the zebra wood veneered in. Yeah, it looks pretty accurate compared to the original, so I'm quite pleased with it up to this point. So the next phase was to put the mahogany veneer on. Wasn't quite sure how to do this, so I thought I'll just use some of my guitar building experience here. And so I did it in 2 phases. I formed the veneer to the profile of the cabinet using heat and liquid to soften the veneer so it would take the shape of the profile. Let it sit in the clamps like that overnight, so that when I would go to put the adhesive underneath, it would hopefully be a lot easier to clamp it and I wouldn't have to risk any of the veneer breaking or cracking. As they say, you can never have too many clamps. Wasn't quite sure what to do about glue in terms of gluing the veneer, so I had basically 2 different types to hand. One's a regular white wood glue, which had about a 15-minute drying time. The yellow one, which I normally use for the guitar work, has a very fast dry time, so you have to move quickly, but it dries much harder than regular white wood glue. And the stuff on the right is just a liquid I used to soften the veneer for when I was bending it onto the form. So the first strip that I glued on the veneer, I used the soft white glue. And I wasn't particularly happy with it, and so for the rest I used the yellow glue, and I just had to move a lot quicker. Yeah, so this was the first attempt, learning as I go here. So here we have the first strip of veneer successfully glued on, and the second, and the third. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad at this point, and of course the little error with the hole that was drilled too large gets covered up at this point. I'm always working in quite a small space and accidents keep happening. In this case, I didn't realize that at one point the front of the cabinet was resting against some fairly sharp objects, so it made some dents in the veneer. So I had to get the old damp cloth and soldering iron out to re-expand the fibers and sand it back down, and got there in the end. For the end panels, I know the originals are just simple straight black paint, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it like that, so I thought since I had all this veneer, I'd veneer the end panels as well, and I'd stain those really dark but not quite completely black. So apologies to the purists. So the next stage, mahogany being an open grain wood, is to put some grain filler in it. So again, this is the stuff that I use when I'm doing mahogany work on guitars. And it always looks scarily red when you put it on first, but fortunately almost all of it gets sanded off again. And so we're back to an almost brown color again when not all of the grain filler is removed at this point, but most of it is. So the next stage is to put some sanding sealer on it. So I just brushed a couple of coats of sanding sealer on at this point, and it starts to look like its final shade. Of course, mahogany darkens quite noticeably over time, so the fact that it looks quite bright at the moment will change as it ages. So having got it to this point, I couldn't resist another mock-up, and so this time I went the whole way and put the chassis back in, and at this point the grille has been spray painted with some gold paint, and the only thing that's still missing at this point is what wood to veneer the front surfaces of the vertical side panels. I couldn't really find out what wood that is, so in the end I just guessed, and later on I just put some oak veneer on here. So next I painted the interior dark, just some black paint to keep it nice and dark inside, and I've started just sticking on some of the insulation that will go between the speaker grill and the glass dial and the wooden frame. At this point I started on the base that goes underneath the cabinet. I didn't have a molder to do the lamb's tongue shape that goes around, so I just gave it my best guess doing it by hand. And this is just a quick shot of the oak edge banding getting glued onto the side panels, which I then stained and sealed like the rest of the cabinet. So next we come on to the decal work. On the top of the cabinet there's a black and gold PYE logo, and so to see about rebuilding one of those, I printed a PYE logo on a piece of decal paper, sprayed some gold on the just a regular piece of paper. Then I transferred the decal onto the piece of paper itself so that they're stuck together. Then I sprayed the decal with some oil-based varnish, which with this particular decal has the effect of turning the white transparent, so the gold would now come through. And here's what it looks like when I put it on the cabinet and just put 1 or 2 layers of sanding sealer on top. Okay, at this stage, time to address the glass dial. This is going to be one of the biggest challenges, but just as a reminder, this is what it started out looking like. So I removed the glass dial, scanned it into the computer with my scanner, and then spent a considerable amount of time on Photoshop to reconstruct it and repair it and basically fill in all the bits that were missing, and get it to a point where I could print it onto a decal and see about sliding it onto a piece of glass. Of course, it has to be flipped horizontally before you print it, because it will be sticking to the inside of the glass, and so therefore you need to print the reverse image before putting it on the glass. So there we go. This is the stage it's at the moment. I still need to properly varnish the cabinet, and there's probably still some work to do on the electronics inside, but it's basically working okay. There's more work to do on the glass dial because one of the limitations of the process is that when you fix it to the glass, it makes the whole decal a little bit transparent, so it doesn't quite have that, the black isn't quite as black as it needs to be. Okay, so that's what the project looks like for the moment. I hope that's been of interest to folks out there. I'll do probably another one on the chassis and the electronics, and then when I have another go at the glass dial, I think I have some ideas on how I can improve the process. And I'll put up an update when that's done. So thanks for watching.